Today I'm going to compare and contrast two theories out of chapter 10 in our book. The first theory is the motivation and attribution theory, and the second theory is the motivation and expectancy theory. Now, first of all, I put these in a Venn diagram because I like how a Venn diagram has everything side by side. It can really help you see the characteristics of both theories without having to flip back and forth. So first I want to talk about the middle part, the both. Both of these theories depend on the mindset of the students. So it's important to keep that in mind while we read through these theories. Also, depending on the mindset of the students, it determines if the students can self-regulate their learning or not. So, with that being said, let's move over here to the motivation and attribution theory. First of all, the motivation and attribution theory seeks to understand the excuses and the explanations that students give on why they failed or succeeded. Now, all of these excuses or explanations usually have at least three characteristics in common. The first one is it's either an internal or external excuse, such as if it's internal, I studied really hard on this test. That is why I passed. If it's external, oh, the test was easy. That's why I passed. Now, for stable and unstable, I'm going to talk about those in just a second. And then this third characteristic is controllable or uncontrollable, such as it's controllable on whether or not you studied. If you did not study, you were in control of that. Uncontrollable would be you broke a leg and you were in the hospital for a couple of days and you didn't know about an assignment. Now, there are four explanations for success or failure, and they are ability, effort, task difficulty, or luck. Now, back to stable and unstable. Ability and task difficulty is under the stable characteristic. It If a student is stable, they chalk a failure or success up to task difficulty or ability. If a student is unstable, then they chalk the failure up to effort or luck. Now, the locus of control is another important aspect of the motivation and attribution theory. And the locus of control can either be internal or external. And depending on whether it's internal or external, depends on whether or not the student thinks that the reason they are passing the class is their fault, or if the reason they're passing the class or not is the teacher's fault. Now, it's very important to remember that students always try to keep a positive self-image. Therefore, it de- these characteristics up here depend on that. So, if they are trying to keep a positive self image in front of their peers or classmates, then they are usually going to have an external reason. Oh, it's the teacher's fault, or the test was too hard, that's why I didn't pass. Now, down here, the main goal of the motivation and attribution theory is to praise the effort, not the intelligence. Because if we praise the effort, then motivation will increase because the students will see that their motivation or their effort is actually giving them a reward, therefore their motivation will increase. Now, this leads us into the motivation and expectancy theory. This theory is the belief that people's efforts depend on the expectations of the rewards. So, there is a formula that the book talks about, and it is the motivation equals the perceived possibility of success times the incentive they get for success. And this is known as the expectancy model. And according to the book, you can use this formula and depending on these two things, depends on the motivation a student has. So it is important to remember that a person's motivation increases as the task difficulty increases. So this is true. This right here is true. The person's motivation increases as the task difficulty increases. It's true until a student sees the success is unlikely or the success is not worth the effort anymore. So with that being said, we need to make sure that the task or the activities that we are giving the students are in the moderate or difficult range, not the impossible range, but the moderate or difficult range, because moderate or difficult tasks are better than the easy ones. Because if a student sees that the possibility of success is high, then it will decrease the motivation. Now, the whole point of this theory is that success must be in reach, but not in easy reach for all of the students. So, to sum it up, according to the motivation and attribution theory, we need to praise the effort, not the intelligence level of a child. And according to the motivation and expectancy theory, success must be in reach for all students, and it should not be an easy reach for all of the students. So, these are the two theories that I pulled out of chapter 10. Thank you so much for listening to me compare and contrast them.